but my God, the camera's horrible. What's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Welcome back, Mac Studio Performance. This is what this video is going to be all about. I'm going to share with you the specs I got for my particular Mac Studio and just some high-level observations on the performance to give you an eye of what you can expect out of this machine. I think it's great. But anyway, before I jump into the details, what I need from you is that SLC. Hit subscribe, like, and comment, and more importantly, hit the notifications bell to stay in touch with the new videos that we have up and coming. Okay, so let's jump right into this. Here is the beautiful box of this thing. It's amazing, well packaged, well designed. I love this thing. It is a heavy beast, I must say. Here's the back of the box. You can have a look at that there. Generally, I love the packaging. It was great. When it came out, I was like super excited, and that's because you can approach a specific build for your Mac Studio. So what I ultimately decided to go with was the M1 Max silicon chip. I didn't go with Ultra. So let me describe the difference between the two. So the M1 Max is just one chip, and it's Apple's chip specifically for their devices. The M1 Ultra is basically a concatenation of two M1 chips to make a powerful unit. And the reason why I just went with just the one chip is because M1 Ultra is typically needed for people who are doing 3D modeling. I would say if you're involved in AI stuff, you probably need that type of power. Whereas for me, it's just purely music-based stuff. And everything I read and heard from my discussions with others is just the M1 chip on its own versus any Intel-based machine with a similar setup of memory blows things out of the water. It's very powerful, and I could say that was a definite attraction. So again, I went with the one chip, the M1 Max, and then I got 64 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD drive. It comes with 10 cores, so 8 cores dedicated to processing and 2 dedicated to efficiency with a 32 core GPU. So that's the rundown of the machine I have in the studio here. Works for me. I was a little concerned about, it working, the Thunderbolt ports working nicely with my 2 Apollo 8s and my Apollo Twin, and all of that was pretty much resolved by getting one of these peripherals. You can see that. I hope that's in focus for you. It's about 60 Canadian, so I rendered that probably at about 40 US, 45 US approximately. And everything worked well. I only needed one of them. I actually got 2 just in case, but I only need one because UAD's sound cards are daisy chained, so it made it even easier. All right, so that's an overview of the specs I got. Why don't we jump into the rest of the video? All right, point number 1, this thing is much faster and efficient. I can't tell you how incredible the performance is. I'm going to use just a real example. So as you know from the first video on this, I started from scratch. I installed everything, all of my plugins. And I remember when I first ran Logic after installing it, along with all of the plugins I had to put on the machine, it was something like well over 160 to 200 plugins around that area. And it flew through them, like in terms of Logic identifying the audio units, like in under 2 minutes. And that's no exaggeration. It was super fast. It might have been faster. Based on my memory of how it used to do that same task on my Intel machine, it took more than double that amount of time for it to do that analysis. So it's super fast, super quick. And that is just one example. Lots of audio stacks and pushing it through some rigorous performance pieces that just blew through all of those things. So highly recommended, just based on, you know, the fact that it's faster and much more efficient. You can see it and feel it in the product. Point number 2, audiophiles will love this one, but the thing is quiet, like super quiet, like to the point where you're wondering, is this thing on? Like, it's super quiet, and I love that about the unit itself. There's no vibrating, even though it has a lot of room for, you know, to make sure there's space for cooling and stuff. I haven't heard any sort of overdrive on the fans going at all, and it does tend to get quite hot in here, but it is super quiet. So I love that about this unit as well. Point number 3, this one is a con though. There, in my opinion, as a person working with a lot of audio programs and stuff, there's not enough USB ports in the back. There's a lot of Thunderbolt ports. There's 2 in the front and another 4 in the back, but for USB there's only 2. And there's an SD drive in the front of the unit as well, which I think is really convenient. If you have backups like I do and tons of sampling drives like I do, and the fact that, you know, through MIDI now, you don't need a MIDI interface necessarily like we did back in the 90s. It's just straight USB. Highly recommend getting a 7-port or 7 to 10 port USB to complement the Mac Studio. So I ran out of it very quickly and knew I would just need more straight off the bat. All right, point number 4, let's talk about latency. Somewhat of a con. I was a little disappointed that Logic, you know, when I loaded everything up, there was still some lag, some latency lag, and I was hoping for that to improve substantially. But what I will say is, the moment I hit the low latency mode, it doesn't need to take out as many plugins to get things to line up as quickly, and it is solid. There's virtually no latency when I press the low latency mode in Logic versus my experience on my previous Intel-based machine. So that's just one observation. So kind of a bit of a nuisance, but at the same time, when you look at when you're engaging low latency mode, it does what it says. It's completely accurate, and it's something I don't necessarily have to engage all of the time. It's only when I'm actually writing something through MIDI and I need it captured in the machine where I need that accuracy of very low latency. But pretty good. And I think at the end of the day, because after seeing how other programs run on Mac Studio, I think it's just a software piece, a coding piece that Apple needs to improve in Logic, because definitely with Ableton Live, I know a number of people haven't experienced that same degree of latency. So something I think Apple just needs to improve on when it comes to Logic. All right, point number 6, somewhat of a con again. It's gonna 50-50. The monitor. So I'll show you some B-roll on this. It's the 27-inch monitor with the height and tilt adjustment. I found this thing a bit pricey, but the quality components are really nice with the monitor, I must say, versus the iMac I had before. It's really cool that I can just push the height of the monitor up slightly if I'm needing to get through some wires or do a change behind the actual Mac Studio. And the graphics of the monitor look pretty good as well. It's not something I can complain about. And knowing I wouldn't be upgrading this thing for quite some time, I'd say, you know, it's worth the price based on the quality of the components of the parts. I'm not a super technical guy on this one, but I can tell you, when you take a look at the design and the quality of the parts used, you can understand, okay, why they're charging as much as they did. Because all in, between the monitor, the Mac Studio, for me, was just a little over 6,000 Canadian. And so it's a substantial investment, but it's the right investment for me at this point in time. So yeah, the monitor is a little pricey. Oh, and one other thing leading into point number 7 about the monitor, there is indeed a camera in there, but my God, the camera's horrible. Like the quality, the graphics on the camera definitely need to improve. I think they did an update with 13.1 on Ventura, but they got some ways to go. I mean, it's cool that they offer that you can use your iPhone to act as the camera, but that makes no sense to me. The iPhone's camera is better than what's going on in the camera, the monitor, and it's a software thing that Apple has admitted that they will improve over time. So that's just a watch out for you. Zoom meetings, Google Meets, or whatever, I use it on occasion, so it's not a big deal for me. But if you're a presenter that also happens to be a musician and that sort of display is important for you, you might want to rethink that and get an independent webcam. All right, so point number 8, overall, my impressions of Mac Studio and the Studio display monitor, they are the right investment. The time was right for me. It made sense for me to invest that amount of money into this unit because I don't plan to spend any sort of crazy money on a computer for some time now. However, because technology is changing at the rapid rate that is happening today, I wouldn't render this obsolete in 5 years, but I certainly think there'll be some competitive changes and devices that will come out from Apple or who knows where as a result, which will even push the technology much further. So that's what I'm anticipating is a 5-year window versus the amount of time I got away with almost, talking about like 8 years that I got away with on my Intel-based 27-inch iMac before. So anyway, overall, I think it's the right investment, despite the camera issue and the monitor, despite Logic's latency issue, which I think is, again, it's more of a coding thing. It has nothing to do with the performance of the actual Mac Studio unit. So those are my thoughts overall. And there you have it. That is the Mac Studio performance piece that I wanted to just share with people in terms of what I've experienced with the unit since putting it in play recently. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I usually join the conversation within 48 hours of posting these videos, so I'd love to hear from you. Much love and respect, and don't forget, you can catch me on other platforms as well. I do give exclusive behind-the-scenes content. I have a weekly production stream that I do on Patreon and Noodle that I'm exploring there as well. And I have other exclusive pieces and bits of content coming too. So check me out there. Sign up is absolutely free on Noodle. Check the link below. And I'm looking forward to seeing you and conversing with you. Much love and respect. Peace.